Hello everyone. It has yet again been another successful weekend, and I'm currently on my way going back home after a weekend in Milwaukee and Madison, Wisconsin. And I've gotten pretty used to this drive at this point. My girlfriend Brienne lives in Wauwatosa, Wisconsin, and I'm from Illinois, an area called the Quad Cities. And we're currently in a relationship, long distance. It's about 3.5 hours. Man, look at this. What a scene. I've come to enjoy this ride, although it is time consuming. It's a good way to reflect and center myself. So I think today what I want to talk about is a bit about relationships. I know in my channel description I haven't really gotten down to the core of all the things that I'd like to talk about. You know, my personal goals are to assist you in developing and just giving some perspective on life, finances, well-being, mental well-being, self-expression, relationships, communication. These are all ideas that fundamentally I found to be core principles of really learning how to navigate life and get what you want out of it. And there's a lot of experience that I've put myself through for the sake of knowing where other people are coming from, right? So maybe I do have, I have these perspectives or these beliefs or this knowledge, and people might question that. People might say, well, how can you even say that if you haven't lived it? Or how can you say that I've tried that, it doesn't work, and so on and so forth. But I have a history of self-sabotage, and for anybody out there who self-sabotages, I feel for you, and I'd love to talk about that today as well, and see if there isn't something that I can throw in your court to see if, can stand to be improved or considered in the actions you take. So right now I'm actually on the wrong highway. It's interesting. I typically try to take a different way home every time, and it does extend my trip, but I do it for the sake of getting a slightly new experience every time. I think I've touched on that before in different videos, talking about getting out of your comfort zone and doing things that don't necessarily align perfectly with what your ideal vision is, because in reality we don't know how we're going to end up where we want to be most of the time. There's some tangible things that we can do that may reflect qualitatively and improve our chances of getting to where we'd like to be. However, more so than that, I truly think it comes down to the awareness and your ability to accept the possibility of a different outcome, and maintaining that adaptability and flexibility. And then knowing where to draw boundaries, right? I think generally when people give advice and when people talk about a lot of self-care and self-principles, they're not really touching on the whole of the matter. They're touching on a particular aspect, and I do it too. It's to no fault of anybody. Sharing your experience and giving advice is better than not. But what I'd like to do is suggest to people to begin to think with two ideas in mind at the same time. And that can be difficult at first because generally throughout education, throughout life, everything is set up to be experienced and done in a very linear manner, where you do this first, then you do that, then you do that, then you finally have all the things where you can do this, and so on and so forth. But the truth is, that's not how life is. That's not how it's designed, right? Everything's happening everywhere all the time, all at once. So there's a lot of different ways for things to come about. And what will be helpful by thinking two different ways, or knowing two separate truths, things which appear to conflict with one another at the same time, you will instantaneously gain ground on an awareness that you may not have ever known that you could even touch. So let's say, just for example, what I just said and what I just told you is that you need to be open and flexible, adaptable, right? Some people are out there giving advice on just the opposite, being rigid, setting boundaries, having the capacity to say no. This is simultaneously true as your need to be flexible and adaptable. The difference and why those two seemingly separate things can be true at the same time is purely regarding context. So let's get into why we want to be flexible and adaptable, and then why we want to be rigid and solidify boundaries. Both of these come about in the way of protecting your personal peace. And so, what is protecting your personal peace? Generally speaking, protecting your personal peace may at first come off to be as some form of self-care, self-love, or making sure, some people might misinterpret it and think that I'm telling you to be comfortable. And in reality, peace is not the same as comfort. Now, if you have peace, you can be comforted, and you'll be comforted by your peace. But the two are separate. So, protecting your peace. Sometimes to protect our peace, we need to be flexible with our boundaries and say, you know what, this time it doesn't matter, right? We need to be able to zoom out and say, is this really gonna, what is me a week from now gonna think about this particular situation? Or is it worth going down this rabbit hole again, or with this person? Should I be digging this far into this conversation? Am I reliving my trauma right now? Am I projecting my emotions based on the past? Right? That's something that is so crucial and so critical. And I've talked about it recently, I'm going to touch on it again. The fruit of your relationships and where you're going to have the most opportunity to set new boundaries and protect your peace is in the flexibility of your capacity to forgive and let go of any interpretations of the future while also dismissing what's happened in the past, right? And that requires a really complex, mature understanding of forgiveness. And something that forgiveness is not, and I get frustrated with how often this is said and how often people perpetuate this phrase and this belief is that you may forgive but you may not forget. And in actuality, if you don't forget, what you're really doing is you're reinstating the past in every present moment, right? You are blessed with memory, okay? We as humans do have the capacity to remember things, but it's made to be used as a learning tool, not something divisive, not something that we can use to conjure negativity or dissatisfaction out of a person or a situation. And so when you forgive, what are you really doing? What do you have to do to forgive, right? In order to forgive someone, you have to recognize truth in its totality. And really, forgiveness, more than anything, is a knowledge of yourself. And who do you want to be? What do you want to have been the influencing factor in how you decided to treat somebody, right? Is it simple enough to say that if someone does you wrong, that you'll cut them off and they'll be nobody to you, no matter how strong your initial connection was? Come now. We all know that things can go wrong. And oftentimes, it's a matter of miscommunication. I find that very, very infrequently, there's a true dissonance between people. It's a matter of not being able to align your beliefs or your method of communication. And when you break it down to that very simple level, it begs the question, why are you having trouble with your relationships? Why are you having trouble communicating? Frankly, there are a lot of factors that we could discuss. What I'll stick to and what I'll aim to help you on today is patience. And again, protecting your peace. So, in order to have patience, true patience, in any number of situations, you have to first steady yourself, right? You have to realize that there are finite boundaries between you and another person, right? there's not, just to put it in a literal sense, you are no one else. You are you and solely you. Check that out. This guy got $1.78 of gas. It's a serious purchase. So, the next part of that is, not something that you've never heard from me before. If you recognize that you are different, right? That you're separate. It's not even a matter of being different in the colloquial sense, but that you are distinguishable from another person. Literally, physically, you are not anyone else. By recognizing that, you've given yourself a key way to honor and utilizing what you know about yourself in order to determine your patience is a primary key to developing forgiveness. So, how can I break this down? It's always fun in these videos. I get myself into these interesting explanations of these fundamental issues and qualities of communication, and I end up saying things that I didn't plan. And okay, I feel you. Very nice. Some mountain. All right. Sorry. Distractions everywhere. So, acknowledging your peace, right? Honoring yourself. What patience and the recognition of separation between you and another individual is going to empower is that you will have the capacity, and you always have the capacity, to decide how much and to what extent you ever let anything else affect you. You ever let someone impact your thought or your feelings or your interpretation of yourself, right? And usually that's what it is. What ends up hurting us, what other people do that hurts us, is what we allow other people to define in our own minds about us. That we hold so much truth and value and trust in this other person's interpretation of us, their interpretation of who you are, that you've allowed it to seep into your own perception of who you are. And that's dangerous. You have to be willing to honor yourself and stand up in every moment to say who and who you are not, who you are and who you are not, right? Like, if someone calls you a liar, if your response to that is to become angry, you've taken it momentarily to be true. Otherwise, you would not have become angry. You would never be provoked, right? If someone calls you a liar, that's their own problem. That's their own their misconception. Their perception is that you don't value the truth, or that you perpetuate falsehoods. Now, if you know that that's true, then you probably don't actually feel bad and you just want to argue. And there's people out there like that. But if someone calls you a liar and you genuinely feel bad and it evokes a negative response within you, that's a signal to you that what they just said is not resonating with your being, right? And what I would suggest that you do, and what's going to give you, again, the most peace, what's going to protect your peace, and what's going to refine your relationship in that moment, is to be flexible with your anger, right? Be flexible. Say, you know what? I don't need to respond to this right now. I'm going to actually take a moment and I'm going to protect my peace. I'm not going to get angry with you. But instead, I'm going to let your criticism and all of the negativity that you have ring out. And what most people don't understand is that their condemnation and what they're willing to accuse others of speaks more volumes about who they are than who they're talking about. Now, everybody loves a naysayer. That's a common phrase. But the truth is, nobody loves a naysayer. But we've gotten numb to it. Our senses have become dulled to the extent where if somebody's a naysayer, we're like, oh yeah, whatever. Those who value truth say, whatever, I know the truth, it doesn't matter. And then even those who do value the truth but don't live by it will be entertained. They'll be entertained. And frankly, I see entertainment in some ways, it's managed to extend to the point that it's become a plague on our society and our plague on our ability to relate to one another culturally. Now, I won't get into that, but that's why I'm telling you this. Because as little impact as you think it may make, I believe that if any one individual holds to their truth and can truly protect their peace and stand as an example for those who speak against them and those who speak for them, you will impact all individuals that you can exemplify that energy and that frequency to. And that is purely undeniable. What really happens, and I'm going to hold the camera because it's so crucial to understand this. When you're in a conversation, let's say you're in an argument, and the person you're speaking with is aggravated, what we know, using logic, using the knowledge of love, anyone who is angry, anxious, paranoid, words that are coming to my mind are discriminatory. They are not themselves. All right? One of the best things that you can do for yourself and to protect your peace is recognize the love that everybody has and the potential for true and pure love and greatness that everyone has within them. And the reason I say that is because when you can recognize that everybody is worthy of love, when you see them angry, it immediately disarms them. Anything that they could say that would hurt you or that they could use to do wrong upon you, you can disarm them because you realize that they're not speaking to you out of their genuine self. They're speaking to you out of an illusion. a human fault, right? They have some sort of experience, belief, or perception, illusion that's brought them to the point of failing to recognize the truth. And so it's so crucial that we recognize to ourselves who we are, and we know that regardless of what this person believes or thinks or projects about me, I know who I am, what I value, and what I'm aiming to acquire out of this relationship, right? If you keep in mind, and if you experience especially, you'll know this once you experience it, but for now, if you haven't experienced it, I want you to know that there's a direct correlation between the success of your conversations and your capacity to love someone. There's a direct correlation between the success and the fruitfulness of your relationships and your capacity to display and truthfully love someone. And so there within, we find the trouble of navigating boundaries and flexibility. Given the context that I've now established, we understand that the boundaries actually come when we're recognizing ourselves in relation to what someone has projected, accused, or made a presumption about us. We can set a hard boundary, right? And say, no, that's not me. And this is extendable from high intensity situations to low intensity situations. A violation is a violation. If you cross a line, you cross a line. It doesn't matter how quickly you do it or how forcefully you cross that line. If you crossed it, you did. Now, some people might assert that, and this is just a personal example, some people might assert that you like to drink alcohol, or that you like to partake in drugs, or that for some reason whatsoever, you value your time inebriated more than you value your time in sobriety. And that can come in a very casual form, okay? Like I'm telling you, extremely casual. Somebody might just say, hey, you want to go smoke? Or you want to do a shot? You want to take a shot? And those are small violations. Whereas, you know, you might be in a situation where someone's yelling at you and saying, you're a liar, you're a terrible, awful person, right? Either way, they may be crossing a boundary that you have set regarding yourself. Somebody may perceive that you're dangerous, or that you don't deserve friendship. You know, people can say really terrible things. But the strength that you have and the capacity that protects your peace is honoring yourself and recognizing that you are not them, and their words are not your truth. And so the moment that you hear something that disturbs you, right? This is the key. Really, this is the key. When you feel upset, when you get that buzz, that twinge, that burning, or that anxiety, whatever it may be, that deep, heavy depression, or escapism, apathy, that's your sign that something is not right. That there is a falsehood that's been projected. And now, because I'm discussing relationships, in general, I'm having preference toward relationships in this conversation, relationships between an individual and another, between yourself and another individual. But the truth is, we humans must also maintain a relationship with ourselves. And so those same things will happen, where your mind may suggest something about you, or a sequence of thoughts, imaginations, and they may produce a terrible, distraught sensation. The key is to recognize that that sensation is telling you whether or not you should value what's being said. Now, in the direct opposite position, if someone says something or you say something about yourself that gives you that lighthearted, vibrant, fully alive feeling, that's truth. That is telling you, yes, listen to this, because it resonates with you. It means something valuable. And what many people today have become under the delusion of is that the negative resonance, that those grinding and awful feelings are the feelings of progress, and that those are the truth. And this is where we get to the point of recognizing where our flexibility is not valuable. Because if we are so flexible that we become rigid in falsehoods and begin to recognize pain and suffering and anxiety and heaviness as the truth, where we value those things over lightness, happiness, connection, worth, value, good, then you have fundamentally breached your boundary. You're too flexible. But some people use the system totally backwards. They get flexible toward the negativity, and then they get rigid about positivity. And you can get trapped over there until you realize that you're just doing the whole thing wrong. Trust me, I've done it. So the difference is whether or not you recognize if you're doing the thing right or you're doing the thing wrong, right? So, with this fresh on your mind, what I will say is that most likely, if this resonated with you, you're going to face a test. In the near future, there will be a moment where something that stirs you, something that seeks to rile you up and drive you into a negative heaviness, anxiety, a sort of, or you could already be there. It's time for you to look to identify the truth. And if someone is saying something to you that is untruthful, recognize it for exactly what it is. A lie. It is not the truth. And simply disregard it. Say, wow, that person sure is negative. That person sure does think poorly of me. But know that it's not your responsibility to bear. their ability to know you, to value you, to understand you is one and wholly theirs. And at the same time, your job is to wholly and know yourself in truth, so that you can distinctualize when something being perpetuated about you is false, right? So again, just one of the last things I want to touch on again, I mentioned it earlier. As you go into your conversations with other people, your relationships, this could be family, significant others, friends, new contacts. When you go to have a conversation with them, try to bear in mind and gain awareness at all times, as much as you can, that the truth is that you and that other person are abundant in love. And if you can love that person, it will mean that you can disregard the flaws and, I suppose, the inequities that they present to you. Recognize where your values are not matching their values, and whether or not either of your values are something that's true. And that may take just a little bit of time and perspective. So again, take your time, be patient, honor yourself and honor others by expressing your capacity to love them, by not always caring about what they say. Care more about maintaining your relationship than having them have the perfect idea of who you are, or the perfect concept, or to fully know you in every moment all the time, right? That's just ego. If you can't stand for someone to misunderstand you, you don't deserve that relationship, quite frankly, right? Maybe they're just having a bad day, Look out for people more. Utilize your compassion. Always maintain respect and love people wholly, and surely your relationships will flourish. Thanks. Take care.